What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome. I make videos about witchcraft, paganism, spirituality, and other related topics, so feel free to hit subscribe if that sounds like something interesting to you. Today we're going to talk about the history of Samhain and the pagan origins of Halloween, and I'm going to be telling you about the origin, the celebrations that the Celts used to do, going into the Middle Ages and all of that stuff, and then ways that you yourself can celebrate Samhain. So let's get right into it. So let's start off with the origin of Samhain. Samhain originated from an ancient Celtic celebration. It was the most important of the 4 fire festivals, and today it is celebrated to honor the dead and welcome in the dark half of the year by pagans, neo-pagans, and Wiccans alike. The Celts marked it as the most significant of the fire festivals, and what they would do is that they would let the hearth fires in family homes burn out while the harvest was being gathered. After that was done, then people would come together along with druid priests and would then light a communal fire from a wheel that would be representative of the sun, and they'd make a large bonfire. They would then take a flame from the bonfire at the end back home to relight their hearth from the communal bonfire. The celebration lasted 3 days and 3 nights. People would often get very drunk. People would leave out offerings for the fae, and people would also dress up so that the fairies and the spirits would not kidnap them. And that's kind of where the whole thing, dressing up thing, originated. There were a few entities that were believed to be active on Halloween night as we know it. So the Puka was a shape-shifting creature who received offerings from the field, and he was quite mischievous, and people would leave offerings in order to placate him and spirits that were like him. The Lady Gwyn was a headless woman dressed in white, and she would chase people at night along with a black pig. And the Dullahan were impish creatures, sometimes headless men on horses who carried their heads, and seeing them on Samhain was an omen of death. Now let's talk about the progression into the Middle Ages. Now, in the Middle Ages, bonfires became smaller and were lit near farms to protect the families that lived within the homes. They would also, jack-o'-lanterns also started around this time, and they were carved turnips actually in the beginning, and they later switched to pumpkins. And I will go over a story relating to that later, and it's very interesting, so stick around for that story. Dumb suppers also started during this time, and these are very, very popular nowadays among Wiccans, witches, and neo-pagans. And basically, a dumb supper is when you have a completely silent supper, but your ancestors are sitting with you at the table, and it is completely silent, and you have supper with them, with the dead, basically. Later on, as Christianity gained more and more influence, church leaders attempted to change Samhain into a Christian celebration. In the 5th century, Pope Boniface moved it to May 13th and made it a day celebrating saints and martyrs, but this did not end the fall celebrations. In the 9th century, Pope Gregory moved it back to the time of the fire festivals, but declared November 1st All Saints' Day and November 2nd All Souls' Day. And then kind of morphed in October 31st became All Hallows' Eve, which is now called Halloween. And it was adopted into 19th century America and brought over by immigrants from Ireland, Wales, Scotland, and England, and that kind of whole area of the world where it was being celebrated. Trick-or-treating actually may have been derived from the ancient Irish and Scottish practice of mumming. This was also done in England. I think it may have been done in Wales, but I'm not sure. And it was basically people would put on costumes and go door to door and sing songs to the dead, and then they would receive a little cake as return. And it is kind of believed that that is what originated trick-or-treating. Let's talk about the origin of jack-o'-lanterns and one of the stories surrounding jack-o'-lanterns, and just a nice Halloween story that you may or may not have heard before. Now, before we get into that, there are many versions of the origin of the term jack-o'-lantern. Some sources say that it first appeared in 1750 and referred to a man carrying a lantern, a night watchman. And others said that carving pumpkins with the scary or silly faces came from an old Celtic practice of carving out turnips to make lanterns. And these turnip lanterns were actually used to find the way home as the winter nights became longer. Now, let's get into the story of Stingy Jack. So, Stingy Jack was, as his name suggests, stingy. He also liked to play tricks on people, and he was a drunk. He liked to drink quite a lot. And one evening, he was out drinking, and he came across the devil. And he ate with the devil, and he wanted to avoid paying for his drink. He wanted one more drink. He didn't want to pay for it. So he convinced the devil to turn himself into a coin. Now, once the devil did this, Jack picked him up and put him in his pocket along with a silver cross so that the devil couldn't turn himself back. Jack agreed to let the devil go if he did not bother him for another year. So the devil agreed that if Jack should die any time of this year, he would not claim his soul. So Jack let the devil go free. Later, when the year was up, and in some stories it's 10 years, in some stories it's a year, just so y'all know. When the year was up, the devil came back, and Jack convinced the devil to climb up a tree to pick an apple. Quickly, while the devil was in the tree, Jack carved crosses around the base of the tree so that the devil could not get down. Now, Jack convinced him not to bother him for 10 years in exchange for his release, and the devil agreed. And then a few years after this, Jack died. Of course, he went to the gates of heaven and he was not admitted. So then he went down to hell to see the devil, and the devil didn't admit him either and stayed true to his promise. So Jack asked the devil, well, where should I go now? And the devil says, back where you came from. Jack says, where can I find my way in the darkness? And so the devil tossed out an ember straight from the flames of hell itself. Now Jack had a turnip in his pocket. He placed the ember into a hollowed out turnip and used it as a light to find his way back home. And the story goes that from then on, people would carve turnips and place an ember in them. And now they are used for protection against wandering spirits. And these turnips later changed into pumpkins, and that's the origin of the jack-o'-lanterns that we know today. Here are a few ways that you can celebrate Samhain. First of all, you can have a dumb supper. So if you have any deceased family members, you can sit down with them and have a completely silent supper. You can do spirit work. If you're advanced enough, if you're a beginner, don't do it. You can do the dumb supper and like ancestral work to an extent if you're a beginner, but just be really, really careful with any of that kind of stuff as a beginner. But if you're not, you can do whatever spirit work you do. Some people hold a seance, divination. It's a wonderful time for divination. I like to do some kitchen witchcraft with whatever pumpkins and squashes and stuff, like Halloween-y foods. You can also invite your ancestors or your deceased relatives to cook with you. A lot of people like to do that and find that their food turns out really good if they invite in a relative who's particularly good at cooking, to invite their soul to cook with them. So that's something you can try. Another thing you can do is set up your Samhain altar. If I have time, I may be coming out with a separate video on my Samhain altar and how I'm going to do mine. You can make a jack-o'-lantern for protection. Now this year, anything communal is kind of difficult to do. If you have family who's willing to do with you, you can have a supper, a feast together. You can light a bonfire. You can light, if you can't light a bonfire, you can just light the fireplace in your house if you have one. Anything like that is kind of nice to do as well. It's also good to do protection. Veiling is good this time of year because if you're sensitive to entities and energies and stuff, a lot of the time they can kind of infiltrate your personal space a little bit. So veiling and protection and cleansing is always good this time of year. Now, this Samhain is actually going to be a full moon, a blue moon, and Samhain all at the same time. So it's going to be a really powerful energy. So you can make moon water, take baths, do a lot of spell work, do a lot of divination, do a lot of spirit work. I'm probably going to do the full 3 days of celebration because I love this time of year. And it's just such a powerful energy to work with, so I'd recommend that if you can. Any kind of spell work is good this Samhain, especially since it's so powerful. And I hope this video was cohesive and not like super confusing anything. I hope you guys enjoyed this setup because yeah, I found this skull and I might add him to my altar. He's not a real skull, but he's still kind of representative of that energy, you know, of Samhain with the spirits being with us. And I wanted to close off this video by saying that spirits aren't necessarily bad, they're not necessarily creepy, they're not necessarily horrible as some books and movies would have us believe. To be completely honest with you, spirits are often not as bad as they are portrayed. Now you should be very careful. Okay, that's not to say you should be cautious or you shouldn't be careful. You shouldn't just go around talking to them or letting them in willy-nilly, because there are some very bad entities, very horrible entities who just want to take your energy and hurt you and stuff like that. However, don't be scared of your family spirits or of even people who were past inhabitants of the house if they have no bad intent. It's all about intent. So discern whether or not the spirit has ill intent or not. And don't be afraid of a spirit that doesn't have ill intent. A lot of the time they just feel lonely. But again, that is not to say that there are not dangerous spirits, because I know someone's going to misinterpret my words as, oh, go work around with them willy-nilly, you can talk to any spirit you want, they're all cool, they're all chill, they're all peaceful and happy and sunshine and rainbows and flowers. No. Because I know people love to misinterpret words. That's not what I'm saying. A lot of spirits are dangerous, a lot of them aren't. So you have to learn to distinguish between spirits that are dangerous and spirits that are not dangerous. And I think it's also important that we unlearn kind of these negative things that we have learned about the afterlife and the fear that surrounds it. It's not scary, it's part of life. And the more that we can learn to communicate with that side, the more we can understand it, and the more we can improve as people as well. And the more we can stay connected to the people who are no longer with us in their physical bodies. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know how you end up celebrating Halloween or Samhain or Dia de los Muertos or whatever you celebrate during this time. And any traditions that are in your practice or in your family, feel free to share them and start a conversation in the comments if you want. And if you're gonna dress up, let me know how you're gonna do that, what you're gonna be, and all of that. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. I love you all. Blessed be. Bye.